I didn't get it.
Up here on the wall, you'll see our announcements. And on February the 3rd, the first Sunday of February, of course, it's the first Sunday of the month, so there is no evening service. But on that morning, we'll be having our annual budget meeting after the morning service, and that usually lasts about 10 minutes. Then on the 10th, the next Sunday, the Forrester family from Michigan will be here giving us some musical ministry stuff. And I may have him preach for us that day. I don't know yet if we'll do that, but I've got to talk to him about that. Then there's several different birthdays and anniversaries there you see for celebrations. Ladies' Fellowship is Monday coming up, 7 o'clock at my house, and there'll be a ham dinner. So if you have any questions, ask my wife about that. And then as always, if you want to go on to YouTube and look up Crossway Baptist Church or David Vanaman, and then look for videos and watch me preach. Okay? And then Luke, while I'm standing here, there is a way to take the video that we video every time and transfer it to a disc, or is it easier to put it on a pen drive? Because I've had a couple of people ask me for a copy of one. Pen driving it, wouldn't that be easiest?
If your two options are a pen drive and a hard drive with a cord, yes.
Okay, so I'll just tell the people that want it to bring me a pen drive. Because you can get a small, cheap pen drive for.
You could open a Dropbox account.
I don't know how to do all that, so.
And have no hardware, and you would just send it to the internet.
Then you'll have to show me how to do that, and I'll tell them how to do that. Okay? That'll be fine. I just don't know how to do it.
You could just close your computer and pray over it and wish that it gets to whoever you want it to.
Yes.
God
Okay.
wills it.
So anyway, tonight we're in Psalm 50. There's all those other good options we have. I could mentally telepathize, as it were, and send it to them.
You have Sam transcribe it.
Yes, I'll have Sam will transcribe it for me. Yeah, my son, Sam, he's 28 now. And he walks around the house. My youngest son, Gabe, is married and lives with us. And when they moved in with us, we moved Sam out to the man cave. We turned the man cave into a big bedroom for Sam. So Sam will walk around the house and he'll stare out the front window and he'll just go, "No baby, my room, bad Gabe. No room. No baby, my room, bad Gabe." And he'll mumble that all day long. So Sam understands the context of everything. So that has nothing to do with anything important, but we're on Psalm 50 tonight. And so let's take a look at it. And if you look up the wall, you'll see the things that are in purple are all talking about or related to God. So whenever you see the words highlighted in purple, remember that that's the context. So we keep that all in line. Verse 1 of Psalm 50 says, "The mighty God, even the Lord, hath spoken, and called the earth from the rising of the sun unto the going down thereof." So David looks at God. He says, God spoke and he put it all together and everything runs because God's in control of it. So if you want to back up historically and then look at it in a religious and or scientific mode, which, by the way, let me put, science and religion are not opposed to each other. Okay? The Bible and science agree with one another, totally. But you go back historically then. And did David believe that God was the creator and in control of the universe? Yes, he did. But he's saying this as just a point of reference of how mighty God is. The mighty God has done this. We know how mighty God is. He called the earth from the rising of the sun to going down. He made it all happen. Out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, God hath shined. Yes, sir?
Can you remind me what Zion means?
Yes, I was about to do that. Zion, then, is a collective term in some points, and then other times it's speaking specifically about this exact location. But as you're coming up out of the plains and coming to the mountains of Moriah, the mountains of Moriah, it's a range of hills. And on one of those hills, it is Mount Zion. So Mount Zion is a specific mountain in the range. And as you're going up Mount Zion, there are several different peaks. It doesn't just come up to one point. There's a little peak and a saddleback and then a higher spot. The higher spot is what the Romans refer to as Calvary or Golgotha. It's to the north of the lower peak, this little saddleback in the middle, where the threshing floor of Arana was, where David went out and said, I need to stop the plague and so, that kind of a thing. We'll get there some other day. And the lower peak is where the city of Jerusalem is. And right next to it, almost the same peak, but it's, you reach out and touch it. There's a little peak, and that's Zion. And the city of Zion was there. Then it developed and it included that littler peak and the next one next to it, which is where Jerusalem sat. And so technically, when you're talking about the city of David, you're talking about Zion, not Jerusalem, not Bethlehem. The city of the king is Zion. And the way it's laid out, and I'd have to get a map, which I don't have with me right now, but you'll see that the Temple Mount, and you're looking at Mount Olives and all that, it all goes together. But we collectively refer to Zion as, well, it's Jerusalem. And Jerusalem includes Zion and the Mount of Olives and the Mount Golgotha. They're all different little bumpy peaks of the mountain range. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question then?
The city of Jerusalem wasn't there.
Yeah, the city of Jerusalem was not there. The city of Jerusalem, so there's this little peak, and then right next to it is this peak, just a little bit higher, and that's where Jebus was. And then as you're going north, there's this little saddleback, and there's Golgotha. It wasn't called Golgotha way back in Old Testament days, later on. But then the original city of Jebus, before it was Jebus, was here. And David one time says, if someone could just get Zion for me. Well, they took that. Well, then Jebus was next to it and all that. So there's a whole lot more to it, but there's several different mountain peaks. And Mount Zion is as you're coming up, you're in the south, you're going north. You hit Zion, then you go up another couple of feet, and there's where Jerusalem is, and the Mount of Olives is over here, and straight ahead is Calvary.
You went there?
Pardon?
You went there, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So they're all just different bumps of the same mountain, okay? That is Zion. And Zion is specifically what David says, Zion, that's my city. But when he says that, he's talking about Jerusalem entirely. And today Jerusalem it's much bigger than it was in David's day. Okay? But that's a good question. Zion is referring then generically to the city of Jerusalem. But specifically, it's a peak of the mountain just to, I believe it's the southeast. But don't quote me on that. I'd have to look at the map again. So David says, out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, God has shined. So God, for whatever reason, and there's a lot of speculation, a lot of guesses, God looks at the whole globe of the world, and he says, Israel is the place I want. And he takes a look at Israel, he says, Jerusalem is the place I want. And then he looks at Jerusalem, he says, that's where my temple will be, right there. Now, it is my opinion. I'll step over to the side because this is not biblical per se. I think it makes sense biblically, but the Bible teaches as a direct thing. So my assumption then is, my conclusion is, that when God had the Garden of Eden, and in the center of the Garden of Eden was the tree of life, I believe it was on Mount Calvary. That's my opinion. I don't know that that's correct. You couldn't prove me right or wrong. But God says, after the flood and everything, you go to what we call the Middle East, you go to the land of Israel, you go to that mountain, Abraham, sacrifice your son there. That's where my son will be sacrificed. Jerusalem is my city. Of all the mountain peaks in this range, that's the one. And it's special to God. And the Bible repeatedly talks about how God claims ownership of the world, and Mount Zion, Jerusalem, is his place. Okay, so if nothing else, you can make any other conclusions or adjustments or association you want, but that was, it was and it still is. God said, and when I come back, that's where my kingdom will have its throne. Okay? So, he says, out of that, in the perfection of beauty, God shines. That's where God is seen. Okay? That's where he puts forth his glory. Our God shall come and shall not keep silent. A fire shall devour before him, and it shall be very tempestuous round about him. Now, David here is talking about, whether he understood it or not, I don't know, but he's talking about when Jesus or when God comes back to set up his kingdom. Now, David was the first king that was rightful king of the Jews. Saul was the first king technically, but he wasn't the right king. But David says there's going to come a time when God comes and sets it up, and Jerusalem will be in control of everything. Out of Jerusalem, God will rule everything. The fire shall devour before him. God's going to stop, and the rest of the world, the enemies are going to be gone. He shall call to the heavens from above and to the earth that he may judge his people. Now we know that his people, David is thinking of the Jews. And he's correct in that. But we also know that the Bible tells us that in the Old Testament and then again in the New Testament, that there will be a people that weren't his people that shall be his people. And he's talking about the Gentile nations. And they will be fellow heirs. And we see that described in detail in the New Testament, but talked about repeatedly in the Old Testament. So when David talks about God's people, he's thinking, well, it's the Jews. And at the time, that's what it was. But God says, I want everybody. And I'm using the Jews to evangelize the world, and then I'll use the Gentiles to evangelize the world later, and then I'll come back to the Jews when I bring up my kingdom. And so we get through the tribulation and into the kingdom. First of all, the tribulation is Jewish-centered. We talk about it, and a lot of folks have the, apocalyptic seminars and that kind of a thing. And that's all fine and good and dandy. And the Protestant Gentile world is very interested in the book of Revelation. But the book of Revelation, chapter 1, 2, and 3, is about the church. That's Gentile. Chapter 4 through 22 is about the Jew. The tribulation period is very Jewish-centered. Does it affect everyone? Yes. But what's its point? Its point is the Jews. You go back to Hosea chapter 5, I think it is verse 20. Don't quote me on that, but it's close in there somewhere. And God says, I will return and go back to my place, and I'll stay there till they call on me in times of trouble, and I will come. And in the end of the tribulation, after 3.5 years of bad works by the Antichrist, the one we call the Antichrist, the prince that shall come, the Jews do call on him, and he comes. Okay? And then what does he do? He sets up the kingdom. Now, does the bride of Christ, the church, the New Testament, not exclusively Gentile, but the Gentile church, in which there are some Jewish people who got saved, so the Gentile church, are they involved in the kingdom? Yes. But what is the kingdom a fulfillment of? Jewish prophecy. The Jewish king will sit on the Jewish throne and rule the world. Okay? Does it affect non-Jews? Yes. Will there be many believers who are in there, in part of it? Yes. But what is the focus of the tribulation? The Jews. What is the object of the millennial kingdom? Fulfillment of Jewish prophecy. Mary, you'll have a son. How? I don't know a man. With God, everything is possible. And your son, you'll name him Jesus, and he will reign over the house and in the throne of David, his father. It's Jewish prophecy. Okay? So, all of that goes there. So, did David believe that God was a creator? Did David believe that God was going to set up a kingdom on the earth? Yes, he did. Is there a whole lots and lots and lots of detail in those 4 verses about those 2 things? No. But David believed in them, and we can read elsewhere in David's writings and other places in the Scripture where it's given great detail about that information. Verse 5. Gather my saints together unto me, God is speaking, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. Now, here's an interesting thing. God says to the Jews, you come in and you make a sacrifice. There was daily sacrifices, and you would come in every now and then to make your sacrifice. Now, not every male of the family had to come in every day and make a sacrifice, but there were sacrifices every day, and there were periodic sacrifices that you were required to make, and then there was sacrifices of free will that you could make whenever you wanted to. But when you made the sacrifice, what were you doing? You were making a covenant with God. Now look at me, because this is exceedingly important that we understand the concept. Now I'm talking conceptually here for us in the New Testament age of the church, because we don't take lambs in and sacrifice them. But when I come before God in prayer, when I come to church to worship God, I am making a covenant with Him. I'm showing a connection with Him. And that's why the Holy Spirit inspired Paul to write to the church of Corinth, saying, when you take communion, some of you are asleep and some of you are sick because you're taking communion under false pretenses. You're saying, I'm in communion with God, when you're not. Okay? I'm working on a message I hope to give a week and a half from now on ambassadorship. And so I'll give you the teaser for that. As an ambassador for Christ, let me back up. As a born-again Christian, are you automatically an ambassador for Christ? Yes. Is there anybody who's saved who's not an ambassador? Okay. When is an ambassador not under the duties of ambassadorship? Okay, you're an ambassador for, let's say, for the country, for America, and you're in Tunisia. And it just so happens that today, as things work out, somebody needs to take out the garbage and nobody's around, so you pick up the garbage bag and you walk out to the dumpster. During that 5-minute walk with a garbage bag in your hand out to the dumpster, are you not the ambassador right now? Are you still the ambassador even though you're taking... So when do you get to not act like the ambassador?
When the master calls you home.
When the master calls me home and says you're not the ambassador anymore. Okay? Now with that as a prequel teaser, then I will say to you, is there any such thing as full-time ministry and not full-time ministry? Is there anything that is there any truth to the secular and the sacred? I won't preach right now, but think of that. When you were saved, what did God call you to do? Does that ever end? Okay? Just think of that. We've got about a week and a half before I bring that, Lord willing. So, God says, gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. So when they came in and they did their religious observances, you're not just, we're bringing it to today, you're not just coming into church and singing power in the blood and putting your money in the offering plate and amen, hey, that's really great. No, you're making a covenant with God. I'm saying I'm right with God. I'm keeping my contract with God. And by the heavens shall declare his righteousness, for God is judge himself. When I come and make my covenant with God, I'm saying, God, you're the boss. You're in charge. What do you want me to do? And then David says, now stop and think about that for a second. So I'll put it in today's terms for today's people. Is that what we think about and how we think about our lives as we're sitting here at church about to be dismissed? I came here to renew my covenant with God and admit that he's the one in control and he's the one that's supposed to show me what to do, tell me what to do, and I'm supposed to do it. Maybe I ought to think about that for a second. Because I just mentioned in the teaser for the sermon that's coming up in about a week and a half. How many of us think, to one degree or the other, when I'm driving down the road and stopping at the coffee shop or getting a donut or going to the restaurant or doing my grocery shopping, I'm walking around Walmart with my cart, I'm just doing stuff. No, I'm an ambassador. 24/7. Okay? So, here, verse 7 says, listen, get your ears open, O my people, and I will speak. O Israel, I will testify against thee. I am God, even thy God. God says, I will call things into account. I'm the one that you answer to. So David starts out in verses 1 through 4. David's talking about the psalm and how great God is. And in verse 5, 6, and 7, God is saying this through me, David said. I'm speaking it, but this is what God is saying. I am the judge. Now you come to me with your covenant when you give your sacrifice. And you declare that God is everything and God is the judge himself. Now stop and think. If God is the judge, here people, listen. God says, I am going to judge you. Now, don't be afraid of that per se. Don't be, oh, God's going to judge you. No, God's going to assess. God's going to take an account. God is going to reckon the books. Now, if you've been a doofus, be fearful of that. If you've been a faithful servant, be anxious for it. The Apostle Paul takes the same theme in the New Testament. He says, there's a crown awaiting me, And not just for me, but for everyone who loves his appearing. They're not ashamed that he's going to come and check the books. They're waiting for it. Do you want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant? Is that what motivates you in your day? That does not mean that if that's your goal, you'll never do anything dumb, stupid, or wrong. But those dumb, stupid, wrong things will be the anomaly of your life because you're trying, your heart is set on, I want to do right, I want to be pleasing to God. The Apostle Paul said, there's a crown waiting for me. It's the same Paul who said, I'm the chiefest of sinners. Who's ever going to deliver me from this stinking, lousy flesh? But I strive for the mastery. And that needs to be our cry. That needs to be our yearning. That needs to be our motivation. Okay? And he's repeating here what the idea, the concept that David is talking about. Going now to verse 8 and 9. God is still talking. He says, I will not reprove thee for thy sacrifices or thy burnt offerings to have been continually before me. I'm not going to reprove you, I'll put it in today's context. I'm not going to scold you because you went to church. I'm not going to scold you because you showed up at a work day. I'm not going to scold you because you sang in the choir. That's not what I'm going to have against you. Even if you came to church and didn't do much of anything or you came with the wrong idea, I'm not going to scold you about coming. Look what he says. I will take no bullock out of thy house, nor he-goats out of thy field. Sacrifices are symbolic, he's talking about. In verse 9, God doesn't. God doesn't need your animals. He says, I'm not going to reprove you because you didn't give enough on the offering plate. I don't need your money. That was symbolic. I'm not going to reprove you because you missed, because your car was broken down or you were on vacation and you missed a service. No, coming to church was the symbolism of your devotion to me. I don't need you to be there to have a church. I want you to be there. I don't need your money to keep the lights on. I can take care of that myself. But you need to be part of it. Okay? So he says, sacrifices are symbolic because I don't need your stuff, but you need to invest yourself. Isn't it interesting? Just in common marketing, you'll find this to be true. If you're given something, it might be something really nice, and it's yours, it's free, here you go. You tend to think of it as not being very valuable. And that free thing you got that was really kind of nice, you put it on the shelf, it gets kicked under the couch sometimes. But most of the time they'll say, if you buy this, I'll give it to you. You give me $10 and I'll give you this $100 thing. If you pay anything for it, you tend to value it more. And God says, I'm giving you salvation that's free. I don't need your money. But you need to invest yourself so that you put value in it. Because God knows what mankind is like. We tend to value things when we've put our time and space into it. Now, does our time and money and energy and effort make salvation more real? No. But does it make us think about it more? Appreciate it more? But we have to realize that our time, our effort, our money didn't solidify it. But as we invest ourselves, we appreciate it more. And that's what he's talking about. Verse 10. For every beast of the forest is mine. He's saying, I don't need your animals. Remember, he just said that in verse 8 and 9. Verse 10. Every beast of the forest is mine. The cattle on 1,000 hills. We sing the song, God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. That's what comes from out of this verse. All the beasts, all the animals on the hills, they're mine. I know the fowls of the mountains and the wild beasts of the field. They're all mine. I don't need your stuff. If I were hungry, I would not go to you and say, hey, I'm hungry, feed me. The world is mine, the fullness thereof. I will eat do I need a hamburger? Do I need you to bake me a potato? No, I'm not going to ask you to give me, cow meat. Do I drink the blood of goats? No, I don't need that. I, God, don't need any earthly food to survive. I don't live off of what I eat. I don't have to eat to survive. Now look at me. Do you all have to eat in order to stay alive? God does not. God is a self-existent one. He's not asking for sacrifices so that he can stay nourished. He's asking for sacrifices so that we will feel as though we're a part of it. We're investing in it. Okay? Can that be taken too far? Can a person invest in the local church and by investing in it think that they have some authority there? You can't buy authority. Go to the New Testament. When the false prophet, the witch, the Bible talks about, he said, Peter, I'll pay you. Give me that power. You can't buy God's power. Don't think of it that way. You're not buying it. You're investing it for personal understanding of its value. Now, I can tell you all day long how valuable something is, but if you have no connection to it, it's not important to you. You know, anybody here have something that to you is very important, very sentimental, very valuable? You really hate to see that missing. But if you showed it to me, I have no connection to it because it wasn't my mom's. It's important to you because it was the thing that your mom or dad gave you. But nobody else understands that. It's like a little kid. Luke and Bethany, you got little kids still. So, you know, you'll find this out. You know, they got that teddy bear and they just love it to death. And they'll cry if it's not missing. But it's just a rag. It's all ripped up. It's been through the wash, been left in the mud puddle. It's been sewn up and mended. And the original eyes are gone. But the kid loves it. It's important to them. God says, I want to be important to you. What do you need to do to get involved? So that I'm really that important. God says, I can tell you all about the heavens and the earth and how I created it, and it's all true, and you need to understand and appreciate that. But I know mankind. Mankind needs to invest something of themselves so that they feel the importance. They understand the importance. Remember this, no matter what you invest so that you feel and understand the importance, that doesn't make it important. It was already important. It doesn't make it more valuable. It was already valuable. It's just to help us. Okay? So if I were hungry, I wouldn't come to you and ask for burgers or anything. I don't need anything. I don't live off of what I eat. I don't depend on you to keep me alive. Verse 14. Now offer to God thanksgiving. Pay thy vows unto the Most High. If you made a promise to God, anybody, I won't ask for raise of hands at this point. You can tell me some other time if you want to in the testimony time. But have you ever made God a promise? God, if you'll do this, I'll do that. Have you ever made a promise to God? If you did, do it. Did God do what you asked him to do? Then you better do what you said you'd do. Long story short, that's why God finally called me to pastor, to be a preacher. I told God, if you help me with it, if you ever want, I'll preach. And he did. And here I am. Okay? And call upon me in the day of trouble. Offer thanksgiving for what I've done. And when you're having a problem, having a bad day, when you're in trouble, call on me. I'll deliver you again. And thou shalt glorify me again. I've saved you before, now thank me for it. Recognize where it came from. When you're in trouble again, call on me, I'll rescue you again. And then don't forget to thank me again. Does God want a personal relationship with us? Yes, he does. Now, as it is, because God is who God is, and we are who we are, there's very little, if anything, ever that God needs to thank us for. You know, what is it you did to help God out in a pickle? So the thanks goes toward him. Why? Because he's the one who's always taking care of things. All right? But unto the wicked, conversely, unto the wicked, God says, what hast thou to do to declare thy statutes? What are you going to do to declare my statutes? You don't believe in me, you don't trust in me, you don't obey me. What are you going to do to show that my statutes are correct? Or what thou shouldst take my, man, I got to get my mouth working. To declare my statutes, or that thou shouldst take my covenant in thy mouth. Isn't it interesting? There are people who, if you talk to them, they may not be atheistic, violently atheistic or something, but they don't go to church, they don't read their Bible, God is the furthest thing from their mind. If you talk to them, maybe on a good day I'm an agnostic, blah, 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 but when I hit my thumb with the hammer, I blame Jesus. God says, you wicked that don't believe in me, what are you going to do? You've made your bed. You want to be without me, like in America. Eliminate God from everything. Take Christ out of Christmas, so it's just muss now, and all that, and then blame God when things don't go good. You can't have it both ways. You wicked folks who won't accept me, what are you doing to declare my statutes? What is it you're doing that you're going to take God will... it's like, and I'm not trying to blame any person, I'm just giving generic examples because I don't know the individuals specifically individually. But somebody there's a football game on TV, and somebody gets injured, and everybody on the sideline, the team gets down and kneels and prays. But if you watch them on any other interviews and sideshows, not all of them, but please bear with it, many of them are not good people. But when somebody gets hurt, God says, why do you think praying in the time of trouble will help when you say I don't even exist? When you won't listen to me when I call you? What's the Bible say? If I regard iniquity in my heart, he will not hear me. God is he's not a get out of jail free card. He says, I answer the prayers of those who faithfully serve me. Okay? Seeing thou hatest instruction and casts my words behind you. You don't listen to me. You ignore me. Why should I listen to you? I don't. So why does God hear a person pray who's a believer when that person is not perfect? Because after all, you can't be a church worker. You can only be a pastor if you're perfect and sinless. If that were the requirement, how many pastors would we have in the world? 0. Why? Because none of us are perfect. None of us. What should we be? Sinners saved by grace, striving for the mastery. Trying to do it. Trying to be the right kind of example. Trying to be the right kind of leader. Trying to please God. Striving for the mastery. Okay? But when you cast God's word aside and won't listen to him, he says, I don't listen to you. If you ignore me, go back to the book of 1 Samuel. Those who esteem me, I will esteem. Those who lightly esteem me, I will lightly esteem. You get it the way you dished it out. That's the way you're going to get it. Verse 18. When thou sawest a thief, then thou contendest with him, and hast been partaker with adulterers. When you see somebody doing wrong, you consent to them. You go along with it. I will use our generic, though it may be really accurate and probably correct. I don't know because I'm not the investigator. Okay. I had a friend, I should say an associate, a guy who went to high school with me, and he's a very liberally minded person, and he wanted to know how in the world I, as a Baptist pastor, could vote for Trump. Because look at him, Trump ain't a great guy. He's our president. I pray for him every day. I hope he does well. But I said back to him, I said, okay, you're giving me the choice between Trump and Clinton. Why should I vote for Clinton? Now, I may be wrong. I'm not the investigator. But it appears as though she's broken several laws. But what does it say here? You go back to various administrations over the history of our country. And there's been corruption from the top to the bottom. And what's it say here? When you saw the thief, you consented to him. But you made sure you wrote the law so that was okay on a Tuesday between 4 and 5:30. If you were facing east on a 90-degree angle from the shopping center over there. Well, we can make it legal. But it was wrong. You've been a partaker with adulterers. You give your mouth to evil, and thy tongue frames deceit. You sit and speak against your brother, and stand and slander your mother's son. But it's all legal. You do all that stuff, and then you come and you give your money to the poor and say God should be happy with that. Now today, just as an illustration, there are a lot of folks who are less than, they're not the kind of people I want to emulate, let's put it that way. There's people I don't want to be like, and I hope my family, none of my family members ever turns out to be like that person. And yet every year, that person will make a big show about how much they gave to the food bank and how much they gave to the hurricane relief, and look at all the good they're doing. But look at their life. Look what they stand for. Look what they promote. And God says, in this passage, God's saying, you can't buy me off by throwing a nickel in the offering plate. That doesn't work that way. I don't need your money to survive. Your offerings are your covenant with me so that you're a participant in it. You can't come in and do that and then walk out and ignore me and think that's okay with me. Verse 21. These things hast thou done and kept silent. And I didn't say anything. You acted that way, and I let you alone. You thought that I was altogether such a one myself, because I didn't jump down and look at. I did wrong. I partook of all this stuff. I'm one of the wicked guys, and God never zapped me. So God must be a two-bit shyster too. God must think what I'm doing is okay. But I will reprove thee and set them in order before thine eyes. Now consider this, ye that forgot me, lest I tear you in pieces, and there be none to deliver. Whoso offereth praise glorifies me, and to him that orders his conversation right, I will show the salvation of God. Just because I didn't smack you upside the head when you did it doesn't mean I don't know it happened. I'm giving you time to repent. I'm giving you time to consider. I don't want to see anybody perish. I don't want to see anybody suffer. I don't want you to go to hell. So I'm giving you more time. Don't think that the instant punishment didn't come, therefore I thought it was okay. Don't think that's justification. And that's the end of this thing. So think about that. Think about that. Just because I do wrong and God doesn't zap me, doesn't mean God was okay with it. God says, I will judge. I'll take care of all this. The accounting is coming. We started out in verses 1 through 4. God will be the judge. Okay? So, Psalm 50 is all about God judges fairly. We have to understand that. And our participation in the worship service with David was back in the tabernacle and the temple. Well, the temple came just after, but in the tabernacle. For us, it's the local church assembly. Our participation in the local church assembly is not to keep God from getting foreclosed on, to make sure he has enough to eat, stay healthy. No, it's for us to participate in so that we feel part of it. Is God's will going to be done with or without us? Yeah. But God says, would you like to be a part of that? Well, I'd really like to be a part of that. Okay, I'll let you be a part of that. Now, can you be a part of everything all the time? No. There are some plays, and again, I use the sports analogy. There are some plays when the coach says, okay, you four starters, you come off, and you guys go in because we're doing a special play that these guys have trained in. So you're not involved in that play. Doesn't mean you're not on the team. Doesn't mean you're not going to go back in. Doesn't mean what happened wasn't essential. But while you're sitting out there and the four other guys went in and they scored or whatever it was, you feel, oh man, I'm not, no. You do your part where you're supposed to do it, when you're supposed to do it. God will adjust it how it needs to be adjusted. But never think you're not important. And never think that I'm so good he'll never take me off the field. And it doesn't really matter what I have to do. Because no, God says, I'll judge. Gather my people together. And listen to me. I will judge rightly. And for those of you who never show up to practice and never do what you're supposed to do, Just because I haven't kicked you off the team doesn't mean I'm going to have you as a starter. You got to do right. Okay, so you get the analogy there. All right, let's have a word of prayer. Dear Lord God, we thank you for your love for us. Help us to serve and honor Jesus Christ in all that we do. Help us, Lord, to take you seriously and read your word and learn it and know it and live it. For the name of Christ I pray. Amen. Okay, on your way out as you're being dismissed, Floyd has an offering plate. You give him all kinds of money there, and because God doesn't need it, but the church does. Okay?